Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at creating events in JavaScript. So events are one of the most important things when it comes to web programming. An event could be as simple as clicking on the screen or pressing a button and then having the website respond to something that you're doing. So as a first simple example, we're going to be making a website with two buttons, one that says hello and another one that says goodbye. So this is such a simple example that we're going to be coding this website from scratch. So we have our video1 file. Already saved it, so I'm going to generate the HTML, and then I'm going to say that this is hello/goodbye as the title. On the body here, I'm just going to create two buttons. The first button is going to have an ID of hello, and I'm going to put the word hello inside of this button. And then the next button is going to have an ID of goodbye, and this one is just going to say the word goodbye. So we reload it and we've got our two buttons. When we click them, nothing happens. So our HTML is all set up, but now in order to make these interactive, we need to use our third programming language, JavaScript. So we're going to set up our script tags, and the first thing that we're going to do is select both buttons so that we can add some functionality to them. So selecting those buttons is the same as it always is. In fact, I actually made a cheat sheet here with a toolbox of some of the cool tools that we've been learning that I'm going to be sharing with you. So for selecting an element, we want to use document.querySelector. So I'm going to go here, let variable name, and it looks like there's some template stuff here that we need to fill in. So let, I don't know, hello button be the button that has ID hello. And then I'm going to let goodbye button be the button that has goodbye as its ID. So now we've selected both buttons, and now it's time for the new part. We need to add some functionality to the buttons. So to add some functionality, we're going to be using a new function called add event listener. So add events listeners. And this is like a crazy looking function, and that's why I've made this toolbox kit here. So we're going to take this thing, the add event listener function, and we're going to copy it. And if you do Command V, it doesn't come out very nice. But if you do Command Shift and V all at the same time, it will automatically format it properly. So the way Add Event Listener works is it says take some element. In our case, we're going to start with that Hello button that we selected. So take the Hello button, add an event listener to it. And then there's many different types of events in JavaScript. One would be clicking on the screen, one would be dragging a mouse, one would be typing a button, one would be changing a value of something. So the event that we're going to be listening for is when we click on the button. So the event type template here, we type in click. So it says when the hello button is clicked, now we've got a function and all of the code is going to go here. So this is almost like a mini script tag. It's like a procedure that only runs when we click the button. So the only thing we want to do when the button gets clicked is we want to alert hello. Wow, I can't type today. Alert hello. So when we click on this button, this function will run, and the function is a list of commands, in this case only alert hello. If we wanted to alert a couple of things, we could alert a couple of things, and then let's see what happens. So now we'll alert hello first when we click the button, and because the button was clicked, it will do the second step in the procedure, and now that the procedure is done, it will reset. And it listens for us to click on the hello button again, and it runs the whole procedure. So now, see if you could think about how this would change for the goodbye button. And I'd have to spell that correctly, so the goodbye button. All right, so I'm going to go to the toolbox. I'm going to take the event listener tool. Instead of doing Command V, which makes it ugly, I'm going to do Command Shift V. And now, which element is listening for an event? This time it's the goodbye button. The event that we're listening for is another click on that event. And then lastly, we want to alert goodbye. And so now if we run it, I should put a semicolon there, let me refresh it. So when we press hello, it runs this procedure. And now the goodbye button is also listening for a click, and if it gets a click, then it says goodbye. So this is pretty cool. But what this made me start to think about was it made me start to think about making like a musical instrument or a drum kit. So for the second video in our project, I thought that would be fun to do. So there's this great teacher on YouTube called Wes Boss, and he's got an amazing course called JavaScript 30, and it's a free class that you can take entirely on YouTube, or you can do the free class through his website. It's a little more advanced with JavaScript than the stuff we've learned so far, and we may do some of these videos later in the semester, but I actually based this drum kit idea off of his first project in this. So if you found this interesting, I would strongly recommend that you check out his drum kit. In fact, maybe I'll show you what his drum kit looks like. So open recent. And his drum kit is actually really, really cool. So it's actually incredibly cool styled. And when you press those buttons, it plays the sound. The one we're going to be making is a little simpler, just because we're starting out. And I don't want to focus too much on the CSS. So I'm going to switch over to my version of the drum kit file. And I'm going to take a look at making it right here. So we've got our video2 file, and it's actually looking pretty empty. So this video2 file uses a couple of elements that we've never seen before, like these audio elements. So what an audio element is this is a way of embedding a sound inside of your HTML document. So I took Wes Boss's sounds, these claps, hi-hats, kicks, open hats, and I embedded all of those sounds into our HTML file. I also gave them IDs so that we could refer to them. So to build our drum kit, we need a way to play these sounds. And so rather than do what Wes Boss did, where we listen for key presses, we're going to be listening for clicks. So let's start by making those buttons. So before we get to the JavaScript, we need to make a couple of buttons. So I'm going to do clap, and I'm going to do the button hi-hat. And I think maybe that's enough for this demo. Now, if I want to select these two buttons separate, I also need to give them IDs. So I'll give a button clap, ID clap, and I'll give the button hi-hat, ID hi-hat. Now, if you're paying attention, you actually see there's a problem here. IDs are supposed to refer to one element, and I've actually already used that ID for the audio. So I think I should actually call this clap button, and this one hi-hat button. And that way I don't overlap with the ideas that we gave previously. So in order to make our drum set, what we're going to do is we're going to start by selecting the sound elements that we're going to use. So select the sounds. So the first sound that we're going to be using is, let's see, actually I'm going to start by selecting the buttons. So select the buttons. So I'm going to go over to my toolkit. To select something, I use document.querySelector, and I'm going to be using this twice to select both buttons. So variable name is going to be clap button, and I'm going to name the thing with ID clap button as clap button. So this is a common pattern in JavaScript where you'll take the thing with that ID and then you'll just give it that variable name. And then I'm going to take hi-hat button, my other button, and I'm going to give that the selector to select the thing with ID hi-hat button. Now what I'm going to do is each of these needs to have a function attached to it. So I'm going to add an event listener to each one of these. So I'm going to start by saying, start by taking the event listener tool from our toolkit, copying it, and Command-Shift-V for neat paste. And then I'm thinking about the procedure that's going to run when I click not just a random element, but when I click the clap button element that we selected before. So the event type here is going to be a click event again. And let's see, our procedure goes here. So when we click this button, what we want to do is we don't want to alert something. We actually want to play that audio sound. So I created in the toolbox a set of 2 lines of code that would play an audio element. So we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it. So we're going to have an error. Let's see what the error is. So I'm trying to clap and we don't hear that clap sound. So let's take a look at our console. So it says sound is not defined. And the reason why sound is not defined is we actually haven't selected the audio element that should be playing when we play these. So I'm going to do that right away. When I press the clap button, I want the sound to equal document.querySelector, and I want to select clap, the thing with ID clap. But I actually think sound might be not the best descriptor for this. Let me just call this the clap sound, and then clap starts with a current time of 0, and then clap gets played. So semicolon missing there. Let's give it a save and a refresh. And now when we press the clap button, It selects the clap sound, because the clap sound, the audio element, is the one with ID clap. And it sets the current time for the sound to 0, and it plays that. And so we get a nice clap sound. And we're going to do a really similar function for our hi-hat sound as well. So to make the hi-hat sound, we want to take the hi-hat button. We want to add an event listener to that button. We want to listen. Oh, let me see. That's actually a little complicated looking. Let me go to the toolbox and use just the toolbox. I'm not used to having a toolbox available. So we want to take the hi-hat button. And we want to listen for clicks. And when we have a click, we want to let the hi-hat equal this. And then what we want to do is we want to do hi-hat dot current time. Dot current time. Oh, it's in the toolbox. Why do I keep doing that? Grab it from the toolbox. Instead of, oh, that wasn't the neat paste, so Command-Shift-V would have been a better choice. So instead of sound, we want to take the hi-hat, which is the audio element with ID hi-hat, because we selected that here. And we want to do hi-hat dot play. So save it and refresh it. What's happening? They're all claps. And the mistake that I made here is even though I changed the variable name, I have to make sure that I'm selecting the right sound. So the sound that goes with hi-hat is the one that has an ID of hi-hat. So we select that one. And you can imagine making a pretty cool drum kit using these two functions, but you could expand that drum kit to having a lot more sounds available for it, and I think you'd get a better sounding drum kit. So perhaps that's something that you'd find interesting to do. For video 3, let's see, this is a nice one. This is like a login app, so let's load that one up. And for the login app, what we're going to be doing is something really similar. We're going to be listening for people to click on this button, and when they click on that button, oops, I guess I left it there. When they click on that button, we want to have them log in. So let's give this a save and a refresh. So when they click this button, we want something to happen. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to actually select that button. So let button equal document.querySelector. And we go through our HTML code and we try to see what's special about that button. Well, it's the only button on the page, so I didn't even give it an ID. So we're going to select it using its tag type, which is button. Next up, we need to say what happens when we click that button. So add an event listener to the button. And this one's going to be a little more complicated. So I'm going to go to the toolbox and I'm going to take the event listener. Command-Shift-V for pretty paste. And then the procedure goes here. So when I click this button, I need to do a couple of things. I need to get the username, and I need to get the password. So to get the username, I have to select this element. So I go through my code and I'm trying to see what element is this. And this is a new element for us. It's called an input element. And how do we select this input element? Well, it does have an ID. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let username input equal document.querySelector, and we're going to be selecting the thing with ID username. And then we're going to do something similar for the password. So I'll take that, copy and paste it. And the password is going to be the one with ID password. And so this is really cool. It actually shows up like a password because the type of this input is password. So now that we selected those two things, let me put a better comment here. Select the two input boxes. I need to somehow get the values from those input boxes. So to get the values from those input boxes, it's going to be let username equal, and I'm going to go to the toolbox. And it says here to get a value from something, it's similar to getting the inner HTML of something, but to get the value of something, it says let variable name equal element dot element value. So I'm going to say let username equal. Which element is going to give us this value? It's going to be username input that gives us this value. And so value is actually a keyword that defines anything that's typed in here. So in this case, my value is hat for username, and my value for password, you can't see it, but it is pup, P-U-P. So I also need to get the password value. So let password equal password Which element is it? It's the password input element, and then we're going to take the value from that. And then finally, we need to output this information. So to output this information, I need to take the place where I'm going to output it, which is this output list element, and I'm going to select it. So let output equal document.querySelector, and we need to select the thing with ID output. And then what we need to do is we need to make output.innerHTML equal to something like username dot plus whatever the username was plus password dot whatever the password was. And so what this is saying to do is to set the inner HTML of this empty element to a string that's made of the username added to the username, which was the value from the input box, and a password added to the password, which was the value from the password input box. And this procedure is only going to run when we, not event type, right? This procedure is only going to run when we click. And the element that we have to click in order to run this procedure is that login button. So because we called that button, we're going to say whenever the button is clicked, run this whole procedure. So give it a save and a refresh. Username is Carrie, and password is I don't know. Let's see if it works. Awesome. So in general, not a very good idea to do to your users on your web page, to output their username and password like that. In fact, maybe to make it more readable, I'll do something like this. So Carrie, and then password is, I don't know, pup. And that's a login app. And really what you would do is you'd send those to a database, right? And you would check against the values in the database and you would allow the user to log in. But that's a little bit more complicated than we're going to go. Pretty good for one video. We made these hello goodbye buttons, we made these drum kits, and we also made a login. So I'll see you guys in class tomorrow. Hopefully you found this interesting.